Hi and welcome to Best in Tesla. So we finally got the new Tesla Model 3 Standard here in Europe, and it is truly a bargain. When you compare it to what you get for the price to other competitors, it is hard to justify why you should buy anything else if you're looking for a medium electric car. You just get so much more for less with the Tesla Model 3 Standard. So this new Tesla could really become a big headache for someone like Volkswagen. So let me show you why, and let's dive right in. So we finally got the Tesla Model 3 Standard version here in Europe as well. And that is just an incredible value for money. Now the Standard Model 3 is only about $3,000 more expensive than the cheapest ID.3, which cannot be compared, as the Model 3 Standard can still drive itself and have much better software, safety features and driver assist features, and almost twice the cargo space. Overall, just a much better car. But they're basically the same price now. Especially because with Tesla you get everything included, right? Where with Volkswagen you have a lot of options and add-ons. So let's just check out how much more value for money the new Tesla Model 3 is, because it is setting a whole new benchmark. Because if you compare the Tesla Model 3 with the ID.3, well, the cheapest versions is only about $3,000 apart, where the Tesla Model 3 is the most expensive one. And I will, of course, focus more on the difference in price and not so much on the exact price itself, as it varies a lot from country to country here in Europe and in the US and China and everywhere else, of course. But the difference between the models stay somewhat consistent. And even though the price tags are pretty close, the specs of the cars themselves are not. With the Model 3 Standard, you will get about 150 kilometers more range, as Tesla Standard gets 534 kilometers of WLTP range, and the cheapest Pure Plus ID.3 gets only 388 kilometers of WLTP. So during the winter you won't be able to get very far before you have to charge again. And the Standard Model 3 is also about 2 seconds faster than the ID.3, that only does 0 to 100 kilometers in 8.2 seconds. And the cargo space in the ID.3 is only 384 liters compared to Tesla's Model 3's 682 liters. So not quite twice the cargo space, but it's very close. Tesla has about 300 liters more cargo space, because the ID.3 doesn't have a frunk or sub-trunk, and in general just a very small trunk. And you can't even put a baggage box on the back of the ID.3, as it does not come with a normal tow hitch. The only thing you can buy is this little hook that is only meant for a bike rack, whereas the Tesla Model 3 Standard, you can still get that with a tow hitch that can tow up to 1,000 kilos, very important for us Europeans. And then when it comes to software, well, they are not even on the same planet. Tesla has some of the world's leading and best in-car software, where Volkswagen have some of the most buggy software on the planet. They are still trying to figure out how to make good software, now trying with Xpeng in China and Rivian in the US. So the software is not even something that we can really compare. Tesla is simply just light years ahead of Volkswagen. And you, of course, just use your phone as a key. You don't need a key fob or anything. You just open your door and drive away. Not the same experience with the ID.3. And it has driver assist features included, and you can of course update to full self-driving, and the ID.3 has, well, nothing. And the safety ratings of the Model 3 is also a lot better than the ID.3. We don't have the Europe NCAP safety rating of the new Standard Model 3, but they should basically be the same as the new refresh Model 3 Premium. And we do see with Europe NCAP's testing that Volkswagen cars are just not stopping in time for the kit that is running out in front of the cars. Here Tesla is just once again the leader in the industry. So very difficult to even compare these two cars, as they are so different, as the Tesla is just on a whole other level than the ID.3, but the prices are very similar. But you can, of course, also get a better version of the ID.3. But the first version that has the same kind of range that get above 500 kilometers as the Tesla Model 3 standard is the Move Plus version that is still as slow as the other cheaper version that does the 0 to 100 kilometers in 8.2 seconds, but you now get 564 kilometers of WLTP range. So about 30 kilometers more than the Tesla Model 3 standard, even though we have seen tests being done of Teslas and other EVs where the Tesla in real world does tend to get closer to the WLTP range than the legacy automakers. But anyway, so in real life, the range difference of just 30 kilometers is probably down to nothing, but here the range is about the same, but all the difference that we just talked about is still the same. But now the ID.3 Move Plus is suddenly $15,000 more expensive than the Tesla Model 3 standard. And even though the range is kind of the same, you have to pay a lot more to get that range with your ID.3, as it comes with an 80 kilowatt hour battery, and Tesla has put a 60 kilowatt hour battery in the new standard version of the Model 3. So the ID.3 uses about 33% more energy to drive the same kind of distance. So it will cost you roughly $10 to $15 more to fill up that extra 20 kilowatt hours of batteries in my country, depending on what supercharger you're using, but get the same kind of range. But you can, of course, also go all in on the ID.3 and get their GTX Fire plus Ice version. But then it's suddenly $30,000 more expensive than the standard Model 3, and therefore comes up in the premium Model 3 territory, and here the ID.3 just falls even shorter than before, as even the long-range all-wheel drive version of the Model 3 is still over a second faster than the ID.3 GT Fire Ice. But then the Tesla long range is suddenly back having over 80 kilometers more range on the same battery size, and of course a screen in the back, ventilated seat, and all that good stuff you just can't get with the ID.3. The difference suddenly becomes bigger, but the ID.3 is now the expensive one, as it is about $6,000 more expensive than the Model 3 premium long-range all-wheel drive. So what Tesla has done here with the Model 3 standard is making a more affordable EV, but without cheapening it too much, as we see with the legacy automakers, as the ID.3 cheapest version is only a 388 kilometers of range, which makes it basically just a city car, only your commute to work kind of car. You don't go on road trip in these cars, especially not on skiing holidays or in winter when it's really cold, as its real-world range is even lower than this, and when it gets cold, the range drops even further. And as you know, if you have an EV, you don't charge it from 0 to 100 when you on a road trip, as you don't drive it down to 0, and don't charge it up to 100, as the last 20% takes a lot of time. So you basically only use about 70% of the battery's capacity when you're on a road trip, as you drive it down to about 10% of charge and then charge it back up to about 80%. So the real world range of the ID.3, well, it's probably closer to 275 kilometers, according to many tests done on the ID.3, and in cold weather, it can easily get below 200 kilometers of range. And then you only have about 70% of those 200 kilometers on a road trip, which means you have to charge every 140 kilometers or every 90 miles. So a very useless car in the winter for long trips. And that is why I say the cheapest versions of these cars is basically only city cars. Also because the ID.3 does not come standard with a heat pump, so you have to buy that if you want it to be more efficient in colder weather. That is, of course, standard in all Teslas. And this is true for so many legacy automakers EV. You can go and check their from prices of their EVs and then look at the range. Usually it ends up with something like the Model 3 here, like the ID.4, that of course have even lower starting range than the ID.3. But that is where Tesla has made something different. they have not made a car with a completely crappy and useless range. This is not just a city car. It has 534 kilometers of range. So to put that into a little perspective, if you don't drive an EV, my Tesla Model 3 long range from 2019 had a WLTP of 567 kilometers when I bought it. And I have been all over Europe in that car on road trips and skiing holiday. I even made my extreme road trip series up through Norway in the middle of winter to push the car and see how it handled the cold weather. And there was absolutely no problem. So a range over 500 kilometers in an EV with a heat pump is where the electric car just works in basically any scenario. So I'm so glad to see that Tesla did not make the cheap shot that the legacy automakers use to lure in customers with a low starting price but with an even lower range. And then you end up with something much more expensive because you of course are not going to buy a useless little EV that has only been made to get a low front price. With the Tesla Model 3 Standard, you can even get it to drive itself. And we are getting close to approval even here in Europe, so if you buy the car now, you will probably at some point during 2026, no matter where you live in Europe, hopefully be able to update your car over the air at your home, something the ID.3 still can't do. You still have to get your over the air update at your dealership, but anyway, the Tesla Model 3 you buy today will be able to drive itself at some point in the not so distant future, and if you buy it in Australia, New Zealand, China, North America, you already can. Supervised, of course. So if you don't need the ventilated seats, the screen in the back, and all the other premium features, the new Standard Model 3 is more than enough to be your daily driver in all scenarios, including road trips. Just extremely good value for money. So I personally think Volkswagen has to do some price cutting of the ID.3 if they want to keep selling a lot of them now. Because if you want something that looks very similar to the ID.3, basically a copy, you can just get the BYD Dolphin or the MG4 that is about $6,000 to $7,000 cheaper than the ID.3. So Volkswagen is really getting hit from both sides here by Tesla and the Chinese at the same time. So going to be very interesting to see how well the Tesla Model 3 Standard will do. And if we can actually see an impact on the ID.3 sales. Because if you are a rational person, not a Tesla fanboy, not a Volkswagen fanboy, but just your average Joe looking at value for money in a new EV in the $35,000 to $40,000 range, there really shouldn't be a lot of people that would choose the ID.3 over the Tesla Model 3 anymore. You just get so much more for less with the Tesla Model 3 Standard. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.